Hello, I'm Isaac Feldberg from the America's SAP User Group, ASUG. I'm here at SAP Sapphire and ASUG Annual Conference, and I'm delighted to be joined today by three special guests. I have Deb Bhattacharjee from Deloitte, Jeremy Klobeck from AWS, and Akanksha Balani from Intel. Could you all please introduce yourselves and say a little bit more about your respective roles at your businesses?
Thank you very much. My name is Deb Bhattacharjee. I'm one of the partners within Deloitte. I do three things in life. First of all, I focus on S4-enabled transformations in the high-tech space. That's my core competency, being, having lived in Silicon Valley for 27 years. I'm surrounded by high-tech companies, so that's who I serve. The second role I have is I'm the lead consulting partners for all the semi companies in the Bay Area. And third is I'm also the semiconductor global lead for Deloitte Services. Mm-hmm. In that capacity, I serve around 420 clients globally. And not that I serve personally, but I work with a lot of our team members to go serve them.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And Jeremy.
Yeah, Jeremy Klobeck at AWS. I'm responsible for our go-to-market with our large global system integrators. Deloitte being one of those terrific partners in that cohort. And then also what we call our BCAPs, our business advisory partners as well, the Bains and McKinseys.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And Akanksha.
Hi, it's a pleasure to be here, and Sanjan with the stage as well as the seat with this esteemed panel of judges as well as panelists here. But really, what I do is I run the go-to-market team for Team Amazon at Intel. If you really look at Team Amazon at Intel, there's two big things that we do. The one motion is on the joint engineering side, where we customize our chips as well as our silicon to be made massively available across AWS. And obviously, working and optimizing with SAP is something that we do all day, every day. But as we're getting the engineering and the technology available in the market, we also want to make sure that our customers and partners get the best benefit of our joint technology. And that's really what my team does. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you, all three of you, for being here today. And I'm really excited to have all of you here to talk infrastructure specifically. As the word implies, it's a massive topic, but I'm curious to first ask, in setting the stage for that conversation, about the larger business challenges that you see around specifically modernizing infrastructure at this current moment. What are you seeing in this space for your customers? Deb, would you like to start?
Absolutely. So the whole, if you look at I look at this space from two angles. One is from SAP angle, and the second is more broadly from the infrastructure angle. I've been with the SAP ecosystem for 21 years, so used to work with SAP before I came into Deloitte. Now, as the world moved towards the S4 to be able to leverage the columnar database and therefore leverage all the silently, all the data that silently resides with the company that people could not use it before. As the SAP innovations pushed the whole world towards it, companies realized that in order for them to go into that infrastructure, they need to move into more cloud, platform. Mm-hmm. And in the beginning, we saw that people were actually kind of hesitating to move to the cloud. They were more on-prem, but as time moved on, they realized that actually there is a lot more benefit by moving to cloud from scalability perspective, from security perspective. And then as the AI came in, they realized that all the data that you're using from ERP and non-ERP, mm-hmm. it'll be a fantastic idea to put that on the cloud in order for us to get leverage it. So what we see in the marketplace, therefore, is the clients are actually nearly hungry. In many cases, clients that actually moved into, did not go into cloud, now coming back and say, hey, I want to move to cloud, tell me how, mm-hmm. and help me justify it. So, and the second thing we also see, as companies actually, it's amazing where a company exists for 20 to 30 years. It's like my garage example, right? If you look at your garage, right? Go back in the garage in 10 years, you see all the stuff that you have you never needed. So we also see the same thing in infrastructure. for a company which is 20 years old, you'll be surprised how much of underutilized or stuff they don't never used, and it's actually put in the system. So, so companies now are taking the chance of S4 enabled transformations to clean the garage or clean their core. The core is being cleaned. At the same time, the boundary systems are being cleaned as well. So a lot of companies are now moving the boundary system into the cloud. That's the second wave we are seeing, because they realize that it is much easier, and safer and more secured to move the infrastructure into cloud. And therefore, for a lot of my clients, I see is starting from first with S4, then moving into the all infrastructure moving to cloud.
Thank you, Deb. I appreciate that answer. And in building on that answer, Jeremy, could you speak a little bit to what you're seeing from the AWS perspective in terms of the challenges of making a shift that massive of moving to the cloud with infrastructure?
Well, first of all, I think you did a wonderful commercial for us, so I think we're going to have to start pulling you into more of our customer conversations, because that was perfect. But it's interesting. We do have two things there. You have SAP, and then you have the boundary systems. And AWS just announced another innovation, AWS Transform, to help customers move those boundary systems into the cloud. But since we are at Sapphire, everything does pivot back to SAP, and particularly with RISE. And what's interesting to me is that I think customers have now, RISE isn't, there's not a lot of confusion with RISE. There's just, how do I get there? But the pace of change is creating some churn. So if you think about it, I don't think you could go to the show floor and walk 10 feet without hearing about BDC, Business Data Cloud, or agentic. And these were not topics 1 year ago. And so you have IT departments that are still trying to digest Gen AI and the impact to SAP. Now they have all these new capabilities that are beneficial, but still it creates some confusion in terms of creating that long-term roadmap. And I think that that's the key, working with partners such as Deloitte to try and figure out, how do I get the most value out of this transformation? What pieces of the portfolio do I want to deploy, initially? What do I want to deploy later? And just navigating that. And I think that's sort of the key that customers have been trying to work through more recently.
Thank you. And Akanksha, to close us out on that question of challenges, what are you seeing on the Intel side in response to a lot of these trends in the ecosystem that are being laid out here?
Yeah, I mean, us as Intel, we're an ingredient. And so what we have this really amazing capability to do is to identify the right partners that can really help get that experience for the customers, to help our customers as well as the technology leaders at the customer sides to really start thinking about economies of scale, about agility, and how can they make their data via their ERP systems really work for them. So what we've seen is customers have I think, an initial apprehension of moving to the cloud. But the moment the projects start, of course, with our capable partners like Deloitte and AWS, they migrate and they recognize how much they save, how much they're keeping up to date with the industry trends, and how they're adopting the latest technologies in their infrastructure to make their workforce, and their product environments even more successful for themselves in the market. So just learning that, building those success stories, and ensuring that there is a global awareness of how individual use cases have seen benefit coming through from movement of infrastructure and keeping it hybrid or keeping it more modernized. That's something we're starting to see a lot more from an adoption perspective from our customers across all industries today.
Thank you so much for that answer. And you're right that this is a global condition, and this is a global movement that we're seeing. And it's something that, of course, is not only about those business and strategic challenges that we were talking about, but about those operational challenges as well on the technical layer, with data migration being a really key one. And of course, internally, it's also a massive change management movement as well, something that requires a new way of thinking about infrastructure for employees and leaders internally. But to that global point, we're expecting a projected 5.6 trillion in terms of that movement of infrastructure to the cloud. And so I'm curious, as you're looking at modernizing infrastructure and specifically moving to the cloud to ease the burden of some of those AI movements and advancements that, Jeremy, you were speaking to as well, how are you seeing companies get their arms around this specific issue, and what are you seeing about that on the AWS side specifically? If you could expand on generative AI, how that is driving this forward further.
Sure. And let me step back a little bit. We have a decades-long relationship with Intel. And because of that, we were able to deploy massive compute into the cloud. And then that enabled us to start innovating with SAP over 17 years ago. And because of that, we have more services and solutions. We have more regions. We support more instance types, including the largest 32 terabit RISE instance type out in the market. And that gave customers better availability, better uptime, fewer outages, no major security breaches. And so first step was gaining the customer's trust to be running SAP on AWS, giving them a very flexible and secure foundation. And then from there, we started addressing things such as moving those boundary systems into the cloud and addressing data. And then building on top of that, then with Gen AI, it's not only tooling that you can use to go and look at a customer's environment. We've co-created some solutions around, we have a cloud API hub, we have a generative AI data tool that looks at customers' data. And all of this is powered to not only give customers value, but also de-risk these projects. The longer a project goes on, there's more things that could happen. And so the more we can help accelerate Deloitte, the more we can give customers better insights to their infrastructure, to their data. That to me has been the biggest value of generative AI beyond the process innovation. And I think the process innovation is still coming. We see a lot of POCs. Some have started to convert into production. But I think where we've really benefited with AI is, another example with Deloitte is AIOps.D. Taking microservices that are packaged up, quickly deploying them to extend SAP processes to then deliver value to customers.
Thank you. And Deb, what would you add to that point of the generative AI acceleration and what you're seeing about that on the Deloitte side?
Yeah, I would add three things. So the way we see, first of all, my experience with working with AWS in the marketplace has been phenomenal. In fact, the first time I worked with them, I didn't realize that, the clients always look for the cost minimization. They always actually find the best way to, or buy the best product in the cheaper price. So that given, what clients really look for is a reliability, scalability, and somebody has the most amount of services. So we see the three way we engage with on the cloud. One, the first layer is when we engage with taking the client S4 into AWS. So that's one model. The second model, which is becoming more and more common, is BTP layer, which is essentially what is happening is that you trying to have a clean core. You don't actually put too many things in a core. You put most of the stuff that you can be upgraded later or can be scalable. You put in BTP layer, and AWS actually has the most amount of BTP services, which actually is fantastic. The third layer, which is I feel most excited about, is the data layer, data and analytics layer, which is once you have the data and analytics, what you have next is AI, a Gen AI layer. We all know that from the AI services perspective, I think AWS actually has invested a lot of money specifically for S4, so that's going to be very useful. So those are the three ways we engage. Look, AI is at a very early stage of life, right? I mean, everyone says, as Jensen says, it's only 1%, right, so far. There's 99% left. As the things will progress in the next few years, what I predict is going to happen is that a lot of this data will be put in the BDC cloud, as we were talking about, or some data will be in the cloud, and people will start to build applications on the top of it. So from that, using the generative AI principles, I don't know how long the agentic AI concept will last. Maybe something else will come in, but the concept of AI would be pervasive. So people will start to build applications using the data they already have that in the past we never used. It was all lying, under the kind of ocean without speaking a word. And now that data is becoming alive because you can extract the meaning from the data and actually use this to the most recent activities or item that is you're dealing with.
Actually, could you comment a bit, and because Deloitte is unique, because you have an auditing capability, with that data, it's going to be even more and more important to make sure that we have the right kinds of data, and what the recommendations from generative AI are, within certain boundaries, that they're done responsibly, and it's not accessing data that people shouldn't have access to. Could you talk a little bit about how Deloitte is providing some of those services, because you not only can do the SAP implementation, but you can do that internal audit as well?
So I'm not very familiar with the audit services, but so one of the things that we are really focused on a lot is trust on the data. So the trusted AI, that model that people are talking about. So we are trying to build a lot of applications so that you don't actually compromise the fidelity of the data, especially when we work with clients outside of US. Especially in the EMEA or GDPR, that becomes even more prominent. So we are building applications to make sure that it's actually, you get the essence from it, so LLMs that can actually get the essence of it, but you don't expose the client data to external parties or any interactions. Hope I answered the question.
No, absolutely, because it makes us successful, and it's a key point. I mean, because we do talk about putting data up in the cloud, but it has to be done responsibly.
Yeah.
We can't have financial data showing up into other departments. You can't have the wrong information moving around, and it's something that I think is underappreciated in terms of consideration for customers.
Yeah. Actually, the things will become more and more interesting, because in the past, if you see what people used to do, put all the data in one system, which is like ERP, then you have SOX approval for that, and you're done with it because the data can't get out. As SAP S4 actually opened the system, and the data is going out to a lot of places, without naming any company's name, but we are dealing with a company that's very large. They took all the data into cloud for analytics, and now we're trying to figure out that how do we make sure that that data, the security and controls are being they managed.
Yeah.
Because you don't want everybody to see the data, but you have put on the cloud. So that becomes, the security part will become a much bigger important point than it is today.
And I think just tapping into what Deb and Jeremy were mentioning, I think it's really about making sure that we all, using Deloitte services and competencies on the cloud as well as on Intel, we're able to create that training motion as well as the vision for data analysts all the way to CTOs and CIOs on how that data is really going to make them work for making sure that those companies are a lot more agile as well as a lot more profitable, because we're sitting on all of this amazing, tremendous amount of data. SAP's products like Grow, like HANA, BTP, and Joule, for example, have already created those platforms. AWS's Bedrock, Nova, again, very well created projects as well as platforms. But making sure that the LLMs are responding to those platforms and creating use cases that make sense for a company's specific data, that's going to be crucial. And I also do feel that when you're looking at it from an infrastructure perspective, you need to also make sure that you've got our partners like Deloitte as well as AWS making the right recommendations to the customers on what infrastructure it should be leveraging for AI. There's a lot of inference before you even go into training for your Gen AI journey that can be done on your existing infrastructure, which could be CPUs. And making sure that that is awareness that is created when decision makers are going through their typical process of adoption of Gen AI is going to be super crucial to make sure that there is right economies of scale as well as the right capabilities to get that data to drive insights for every company. So I think depending on AWS and Deloitte and partners such as them, on making sure that there is a very defined strategy of migration for Gen AI is very important.
And if I could put a put in a quick blurb for Intel. I mean, our Trainium, our Inferentia chips are powered by Intel, and that's what SAP is using to train their models. So very, very relevant.
All of your organizations are dealing with customers who are navigating this very complex business environment. And Deb, I'm curious to hear from you first. Could you speak to a specific example of what you're seeing on the customer side of their responses to this matrix of topics that we've just been going into?
Yeah, no, I can, maybe an example would be the best way to deal with it. So I was actually working with a variety of different cloud vendors for a high-tech company, semiconductor company. They are a global company, more than $10 billion, and they have big manufacturing facility. They have multitude of different ECC instances. In fact, they grew by acquisition, so they were really, really not being run efficiently. So they came to us into asking for how to improve the SG&A improvement, and we came up with the idea that how to move to S4. And once we moved to S4, we found that they actually have 250 boundary applications, which are very old infrastructure. Not to talk about the data, which is all fragmented everywhere. So the way we actually then, we went through the whole cloud selection process. Through the process, I realized that they really look for security, scalability, reliability, as well as a global presence, which is very, very important for performance reasons. And then lastly, they also look for really the most amount of services that they can get so that they can expand in the future. So the first stage of the project was them to move the S4, and now they're actually in the process of moving all their 250 applications to the cloud, which is enormous. That's actually big benefit. So when I look at the client from the client perspective, they used to be on non-standardized. The data was floating everywhere. They were not able to use any of the data at all. In fact, many of the cases we found the codes were written by people that no longer work for the company, so they cannot even make any changes. So moving all that into a cloud platform, making sure it's modern and kept synced up with the more modern technology. At the same time, you also think about how to archive the data so that you can don't sit on a bunch of data in cloud and make it more efficient. So we find those are the priorities. So first, move the basics like applications. Second, boundary applications. Third, once you have all the data, what do you do with the data? How do you use the AI and Gen AI? Those are the three, I would say, rounds of kind of a step of how people actually adopt the cloud.
Thank you. And Jeremy, could you speak to that from an AWS perspective as well, what you're seeing of both that customer situation and how AWS specifically helps with those kinds of challenges?
No, absolutely. It's interesting. I did start by talking about massive compute. However, we are a cloud service provider, not just a hyperscaler, right? And why is that? Well, AWS was built to run Amazon and our 100 subsidiaries. And because of that, we have capabilities that we have built to run those businesses and we can use to extend SAP business processes. Because again, I talked about I will give you a foundational platform to run it securely and efficiently and with high availability, but I can also extend processes such as quality management. I can extend processes with our IoT solutions. I can look at equipment operating your equipment data off of the various machines on the shop floor, and I can help improve SAP's predictive maintenance. I can leverage some of our solutions around demand planning that we leverage, and I can help improve SAP IBP. Well, if I improve demand planning accuracy, well, I'm reducing safety stock, and I'm freeing up working capital. And it's taking those services, those capabilities of AWS, and driving business outcomes. We have a number of these use cases, and many of them we've built with SAP, Deloitte, in our Smart Factory facility in Wichita. Now, moving beyond that, we've taken some of those services and combined them into packages. such as Amazon Connect. So if a customer is transforming their contact center, such as a lot of SAP insurance or utility customers, we have a solution for that. We have a solution for Gen AI, as we were talking about earlier with Bedrock, for customers who want to deploy Gen AI responsibly, leveraging guardrails. We offer model choice. Not only do we offer other models from other companies, but also our own Nova models that you mentioned earlier. We also support multi-agent collaboration as well. So you wrap all of that around this capability that we deliver and help customers differentiate their processes. I think it's just a matter of making sure that you're getting the full business value of AWS when you go to transform, and having partners such as Deloitte who are assisting on those roadmap discussions, helping them understand how we can improve and drive more business value is key.
Thank you. And Akanksha, to kind of wrap us up there, Intel's role here is also incredibly influential with customers who are pursuing those paths forward. What can you tell us about Intel and the strategy that you employ to help customers navigate this complexity?
Yeah, I think Intel has seen, across different industries as well as the different projects that we've taken on with our, I would say, technologists within our customers. We've seen that there's really three big things that customers really care about that our partners like AWS and Deloitte really bring to the table. Number one, it's performance. Number two, performance. Number three, it's performance. And so making sure that the infrastructure a customer takes a bet on, because they want to get more agile. They want to make sure that their use cases are going to go out and make them more successful through partners such as, again, AWS and Deloitte. And I'm not saying it's only because they're sitting here, but they have proved out the fact that a lot of the deployments, a lot of the projects, a lot of programs that we put together along with AWS and Deloitte have really seen value come through for the customers. And ensuring that there is an optimization journey that every customer takes, whether it's on SAP, whether it's on deployment for any of their Gen AI platforms using analytics as well as insights coming in from the various products that they have in their environment in SAP, is also equally important. I think from an engineering perspective, the fact that Intel's hardware as well as the optimization on the SAP side has really driven a lot of value, because we're customizing our silicon, even exclusively available for AWS, brings in that beautiful marriage that I think customers eventually should absolutely take the benefit of, and ensure that every one of their infrastructure is really performant to the need of that organization. And I think Intel tracks that pretty well.
Thank you. And
Can I add one more thing?
please, go ahead, Deb.
So I think many people don't know that Intel engineers are actually sitting with SAP engineers in Waldorf to make sure that S4 actually runs most efficiently on Intel chips. So they have the engineers actually sit and work side by side, and that has been going on forever, ever since I remember. Second, once the processor came in, Akanksha, you may not know this, but Intel asked for our help to stand up a S4 system, and they said, look, we already have optimized it, you working engineers. Can you use the real life data to go and model it and see if the performance is true? So we actually ran a lot of tests, and to prove that it is actually running well. So Intel provides the engineering. Now AWS actually has wonderful services goes with it. As Jeremy was saying, the first layer of improvement is moving to cloud, but that's it's only infrastructure as a service. But more and more, the clients will look for platform as a service. They will ask for additional services that they would like to go tap into. So the future belongs to companies or companies like Amazon, who can provide different kind of services to go along with it. So all Deloitte is going to focus on is leveraging their good work and really build applications that can optimize and take the world to the next level. Because no one company can solve all problems, and everybody's problems is unique. It is important to provide a platform that is scalable, at the same time secured, and with the data privacy in mind, and you build the system applications around it, and using the AI platform. So that's actually going to be the future.
Well said.
And Jeremy, I mean, could you expand a little bit on that good work with regard to AWS? I know that there are also a lot of subsidiaries of AWS that come into play when you're
Correct.
thinking about leveraging the full value of what AWS brings to the table here.
Absolutely, and and that's a really interesting point that's not as well understood. We have Amazon Business. Amazon Business takes the purchasing power of Amazon and passes it along to our enterprise customers. And oh, by the way, the catalogs from Amazon Business are available in SAP Ariba. Your expense management is integrated with Concur, and then you also have integration into SAP supply chain management for that indirect procurement. We also have subsidiaries such as our multi-channel fulfillment team for customers who want to outsource some of the logistics and inventory management as well if they want to reduce their cost to serve while improving their SLAs. And so that's an interesting one in the sense that it's not a technical capability, it's a business capability that comes with working with Amazon.
Thank you. And Akanksha, would you like to add to kind of that piece of Intel's collaboration with a lot of what Deb was talking about earlier here, and just expand on what Jeremy was adding from the AWS perspective too?
I think the Johns have really touched on it. The flavor is really out here, but it's really about the power of partnerships. I think it's a power of what is it? The power of four that we have over here. It's Intel, it's AWS, it's Deloitte, and it's SAP. Kind of getting together and making sure that we're addressing our customers' challenges today. And as Deb kind of touched on, everyone has its own competency. But it's really, again, up to our customers, the technologists within the customers that really get the benefit, as well as identify the right skill set, as well as the right platforms that are really going to speak to them to make sure that their industry, as well as our company, is moving to the next level of innovation. So ensuring that they have the right partners, they have the right competencies, they have the right skill sets, I think it's a power of all of those, and then making sure that that comes out and eventually changes and transforms how their product is perceived in the market. I think that's really how we're going to get it all kind of coming alive in terms of industry value.
Thank you so much. I'm going to be bold. We've got one more question here. And I'm going to ask you to take all of the complexity and all of the collaboration, all of the partnership that you were just speaking to, and boil it down into one top takeaway for business leaders navigating digital transformation in this very fast-moving environment. What is that key criteria that leaders need to succeed right now? Deb, I'm going to put you on the spotlight first.
I think the biggest thing that people should be thinking about that how do I leverage the data I already have in a way that can be used in a secured manner, but also can scale as size grows. Because a lot of times I see companies jump into something, solving a problem in a way which is not scalable, and that's why scale is important. I feel that most of the times what people actually got stuck with is not able to scale in a way that they would like to see. So scalability is number one. The second important thing is make sure that as you scale up, you also are things are going to move on, right? So things are going to more agentic AI will come in, or more adoption will come in. People should be flexible and make sure that you can adopt new technologies as they come in. So make sure you're focused on getting the data that's scalable, getting the processes which are scalable, and you can adopt and design a system which is flexible.
Thank you. Jeremy.
Yeah, I'm going to build on your point with partnerships because it's complex. Not everyone's going to have all the skills they need within the four walls of that enterprise, and you got to think about who are you going to work with. And I guess I'm lucky. I have the all-star team right here. We are going to continue innovating with Intel and making sure that we're bringing the most performant and capable SAP solutions to the market. And if you have a complex SAP transformation, you have to talk to Deloitte. I mean, they have worked with the largest global companies. They've seen it, they've done it successfully, and I think bringing partners who know what they're doing, bringing partners that have strong capability and can make you successful is going to be the key.
Thank you. And Akanksha, closes out there.
Yeah, I think advice to our customers over here, that are thinking about moving to the cloud, choose wisely the partnership that you build within your infrastructure. Make sure that you've got, very competent as well as capable, as well as actually knowledgeable, who've really proved and replicated success for personas such as yourselves, where your industry requirement. Choose wisely what your partners are. It's a long-term strategy, as Deb and Jeremy also alluded to. It's really long-term. It's not going to be a one-off, one-on when it comes to infrastructure. If you've invested in your infrastructure for 3 years or more, you have to make sure that you invest in the partnerships that will keep your infrastructure agile. Also, second, track for the best performance. I already alluded to it. I don't think it's going to be rocket science over here on what I think is very important from an Intel's perspective. Performance of your infrastructure is going to get you to the next level of competitiveness, as well as leadership and the innovations you want to drive in your industry through your company. So making sure that your ERP systems on SAP are driving the right benefit, making sure that you've got a very competent technology team that realizes what's out there in the market in terms of industry trends and figures out how you could deploy that with partners that they would eventually deal with in terms of a relationship. And then eventually listening to your customers. When you want to innovate, I think this is something that Intel, SAP, AWS, and Deloitte does very well. Don't be stuck on your product. Focus on what you want to try and achieve through your product for your customer and work backwards from those and figure out which technologies that are going to be the ones that you should adopt to help address for your customers' challenges better than the other guy that you don't want your customer to take a bet on. So I think making sure that those considerations are put in place, make sure that it's a long-term investment, make sure it's a long-term partnership, and it's best in class. That would be really the advice from Intel's perspective, to make sure that you make the best bet for your long book.
Thank you, all three of you. Deb, Jeremy, Akanksha, thank you so much for joining me here today. We're here at SAP Sapphire. I hope that you all have a spectacular conference. We're only at the outset of it now, but there's a lot of ground to cover. I know the collaboration between all three of you and your organizations will help take your customers much further. So thank you for taking the time.
Thank you.
Thank you very
for
much.
having us.